Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. This is Austin Linney here, and I have the honor of having Miss, God, I keep doing that. Mandy McAllister. How are you doing?
Oh, hi. Yeah, I was just living the dream, Austin. Pumped to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So before we get started, I want to thank dreamchasers.com for sponsoring the podcast. If you haven't checked it out, make sure you go over and get it. But guys, there's no telling where this interview is going to go. We met each other on the phone and we became besties right away. So, you know, the good news is I don't know a ton about you. So I'll let you kind of get your story started where you want to, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. I grew up on a farm in a town of like 800 people. And a cool gift that I got from my parents was asking the question, why not me? You know, like I played volleyball, and to play Division I volleyball was this unrealizable idea, as so many people told me, right? But my, mom said, they're going to need volleyball players on that team. So why not you? So I guess I've always, the mindset piece of life has always been a big subset of how I construct my life. See what I did there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's good. You're welcome. Plugs. So I've been an athlete forever. I've, been very involved in high performance stuff, ended up doing a master's in economics, working on the floor of the Board of Trade, realized that was going away because, I can do math in my head pretty well, but a computer is much better.
Yeah.
So ended up switching into medical sales, which has been very fulfilling, impacting patients' lives. But, the chasing your tail of chasing a number, of chasing commission is really kind of started to wear on me after a number of years, and got, bitten by the real estate investing bug. And now I split my time between medical sales and real estate investing, coaching other investors, and single momming the funniest almost 5-year-old that you've ever met in your whole life. So
5 going on probably 15, right?
Oh my gosh, he's hilarious.
Well, what's interesting is I dropped out of college 3 times. There's a misnomer, right? Like, it's funny. I just had a conversation this morning with a guy. We've become a society where a highly elevated paying W-2 job, whether it be 300 grand, 400 grand, 200 grand, doesn't really do anything for anybody anymore. And it's so weird to see, as I grew up, and I don't know how you grew up, where that was the end, that was it when you got that position. And it's amazing the way the society has shifted so quickly.
I grew up on a farm. You ever need to bale hay, Austin? I got you. Like, seriously, my gift for my dad every Christmas is half of a cow, So it was the idea of earning $200,000 a year coming from the town. I can't, like, this idea of if you can be it, you can see, if you can see it, you can be it thing. I didn't have a ton of examples in the world I was living in, but, my eyes were, widely open from some travel in college and from moving far away to, live by myself and play sports,
Where'd you travel when you were in college?
Well, it turned out that most of like my buds, my college teammate, my friends from college ended up playing in different areas in college. So I had a friend in New York, and I was just so smitten by the energy of the city. And, most of my travel was domestic, but still it was, a far cry from, the 0 stoplight town, which I'm not dogging on. Like, my gosh, I had a conversation the other day that, like, the built-in, like, hard work ethic
Yep.
and the built-in, like, I can't get into any trouble because I live 10 miles from a town and you can't drive the tractor that far, like I mean, I'm who I am and my ethics are my ethics largely because that was built into, how I grew up. But I mean, I don't know how I'm going to recreate that for my kid in the suburbs of a major city,
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, what's interesting is that the same with financial education and real estate education and travel and perspective for me is about options. And lack of options, meaning not traveling, doesn't give you a different perspective. And so by even going to New York or going to a Denver or going to an Austin, when you're young and impressionable, you realize that there's different people out there,
Yeah. People that don't look like me, people that don't have the same religion as me, people who think different thoughts and are good people, but we just have differences of opinion. Totally agree.
And I grew up in the restaurant business, and that's an interesting mix of characters. We'll call them pirates, whatever you want to call them. And I just, for me personally, like even though in my early days I grew up in a nice area in Houston, I never, my parents were good people, but I never saw people as different. Like it was so much different variety of different people. A lot of Hispanics. I grew up around a lot of Hispanics, and that culture to me has always intrigued me. And then I traveled to Europe, and that opened a whole different universe. But for me, that was food and beverage and wine is because what I did. And so for wine to, when I sold wine, it was a mystical thing to go over to France and like you see these pictures and like now, like all I do like in my real estate portfolio and building businesses so I can go do that forever.
Right. The way that I put this real estate investing thing, when people are interested in, trying to find a thing to get into, well, I mean, I love real estate. I love how nimble and creative and how many cool things that you can do and how many different niches there are that you can be successful in. But I mean, I love this real estate investing stuff because it's basically I'm figuring out the money thing so that I can go then live my life. Yep. So that I'm not tied. I mean, I'm doing my day job largely now because I love it. Yep. As soon as it's, I don't love it anymore, I'm not going to do it anymore. And I can only make that choice because of the, passive income that I've set up from my portfolio.
And so how did you find real estate? What happened? How did you get started into that?
Yeah. So I remember being like my first must be real estate investor memory was I was 19 years old at a party in college. And I remember having a conversation with the host of that party, the girl who lived in the house. And she was explaining to me that her dad owned the house and she rented out the rooms to our friends, her roommates. And I'm like, and you get to keep that money? Oh my God, that's the best idea I've ever heard in my whole life. So that kind of bit me by the bug. And then, moving to Chicago right after undergrad, master's in economics, I saw my dad investing in hard assets. And I was at the board of trade where guys would lose millions of dollars in an instant on paper. It really kind of doubled down my interest in hard assets, did a ton of research and the analysis paralysis that I see so many people that I work with now. I didn't start actually buying stuff for the express purpose of investment until 2016. And I went from, just really largely starting to now I have enough to support my entire life in, just under 5 years. So it's just so powerful, not just real estate investing, but just focus. And when you make this decision, line in the sand to go pro, if that's a book you haven't read, you totally should, Going Pro. It's a mindset. It's a decision that I'm really taking this seriously and I'm not half-assing it. Once I did that, the whole world opened up.
And how long was before you enacted, how long were you studying real estate? How long was that time?
I mean, I was 19. So what is that? 1999, Austin, that I became interested. 2003, I think I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, found a bunch of podcasts.
So almost 20 years?
I mean, it was in the back of my mind. It wasn't a thing.
Then what got you to get off the bench?
My kid was born in 2016. Okay, and I had a legacy that I needed to build. I
There you
mean,
go.
that was the linchpin of
So
action.
then I ask you a question.
Mhm.
Put you on the spot.
Uh,
What would you tell Mandy at 19, that Mandy at 19, from the Mandy that knew that she was having a kid? What would you have told
mm.
her?
A lot of it was like confidence. A lot of it was, imposter syndrome stuff. Like I think Mandy then thought it was, well, I don't belong because I'm this farm kid who doesn't, I'm not anything, I'm just this little girl. Right.
Mhm.
But the more I dig into this stuff and the more I work with people, everybody feels that way in some way,
Mhm. Mhm.
and the Amy Cuddy research and TED Talk about, imposter syndrome. It's so compelling because you're not alone. Anything that you realize that you're not alone in, you're not recreating a wheel. I feel very strongly that you do in fact need to learn as much as you can learn, but when you get to that point, you have to trust your knowledge and let go of the branch. Because if you're just going to hold on to that branch forever, you're never going to know if you can fly.
And then in your opinion, what gets people out of, or gets them past the imposter syndrome, or at least where they can deal with it?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. So I see a lot in multifamily real estate investing, which is the niche that I play in. Lots of advice of big guys is just go buy the 400 unit. Like, just go do it. Like, who cares? Act as if money will work itself out. Well, I'm not really that person. I don't want to put at risk millions of dollars of like friends and family's money without, having proven to myself I know what I'm doing, So for me, I believe very strongly in walking before I run, that this is a muscle. The first thing I did was a fourplex, and then I did a sixplex. And then I just built incrementally on the stuff that I was doing. And that built my muscle of, number one, trusting myself, number two, courage. And then number three, a willingness to open up what I was doing and put at risk other people's capital. Because I would rather mess up mine than theirs.
Because what frustrates me in society, especially with technology, is
Mm.
nobody's allowed to grow anymore. You can't earn the right. You can't walk the stepstones. When you have a podcast and it's your first
Mm.
podcast you ever done, the
Mm.
lighting better be right. The audio
Right.
better be right. Nobody's allowed to get better anymore. We become a society of nitpicking.
Yeah.
And so when people read these multifamily books, it's like, I'm just going to go for 100. Well, it's like, I got an idea. How about you buy a duplex first? Like, how about you buy a sixplex first? Like,
And I want to provide a little color on that because I actually just gave a talk making a case for small multis on a women's group that I'm a part of. And okay, let's say you follow that path of, you must do 100 units and it's fine. You'll find the money, the general partnership, the, passive investors, all of that. Okay. You got 100 doors. You found this deal. It's so good. It's perfect, right? It's an 80-20 split with your passive investors and then the active folks. So you're part of this 20% and you're so new, but you've done an incredible job of negotiating 10% of that general partnership, right? So think this through with me, Austin. 100 units, 20% of that is 20 doors. 10% is you own a duplex, bro. Do you know what I mean?
dude,
Like,
I had this conversation. I have a buddy in Kentucky, and we had a joke. He was one of the second guests I ever had on the podcast.
mm-hmm,
I said, let's do the math. I dropped out of college 3 times, but let me do the math. You own 50 units by yourself,
mm-hmm.
and a buddy owns 0.00% of 1,000 units. Who's making more money? But he gets to say he has 1,000 units. Who gives a shit? Like,
exactly. I talk about this a lot with the people that I work with. We've got this pyramid of, the things that matter in anything in life that we're doing, right? And so for investing, you kind of have to decide the things that are most important. And sure, number of doors is important. Sure, cash flow is important. Sure, number of bedrooms is important. Whatever is important, but how you rank them changes the outcome that you're going to achieve, changes the type of deal you will do. So if the thing, when you get on a panel or a stage or a podcast or whatever, that you introduce yourself as, I'm Mandy McAllister, I have 205 doors. Well, that's not terrible. 130 is passive. Like 22 is just me. And that's the reason I can quit my job. 53 is a partnership. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're not honest at ground truth with what it is that you're doing,
It just made me think of something. So
what?
here's the new rule. When
Okay.
you're at a convention, you have to say, "Hi, I'm Austin Linney. I net profit this." That's the new rule.
Yes. Oh, here's the thing that I'm pounding the tables on. So I joined this mastermind called GoBundance, and one of
Yes, I know. All my mentors are from there. Yes.
Oh, cool. So one of the things that they do that I wish would be more widely adopted.
One sheet.
The one sheet, and more specifically in terms of this horizontal income, this passive income thing. What percentager are you? So the numerator is how much passive income you bring in. The denominator is how much it costs you to live your life. How much of your life is covered by passive income? And all right, so what? You've got 2,000 units. You're a 4%er, bro.
Dude, have you ever felt more naked than when you have to write out your one sheet?
No. Oh my gosh. And in 2 weeks, my GoPod, I get to be the person doing it.
No, dude, it is. So I was in M1, which was the group underneath it.
Yeah.
And all my mentors are from GoBundance, Tim Rode, all those guys, Maddie, who I talked about. Man, when you write out your one sheet and you have to say it in front of 30 people, I've never felt so naked in my entire life. Yeah. But it was the most realist experience because nobody talks about that stuff. And when you have your net worth, your investments, your weight, yes, everything. Yeah. Dude, it was crazy, man. It was a game changer for me.
Well, I mean, putting it together, there's so much raw emotion there. And, you know
why? Before, I don't want to get you off of it. You want to know why? Because we as a society tie our identity to that number.
And as women, especially our weight, you know, and all of how connected you feel in your relationships. That's something you're supposed to push under the rug and not talk about, that, that type of thing is working or not working. And, the group that I'm a part of, we're all really, really high achieving women and leaders in what it is that we do. So this chance to open up with people who are at varying levels, many very far ahead of where I find myself at right now, just opening up in a way that I don't have to be the one with all the answers right now. Mm-hmm. That is also very freeing.
But let me ask you a question though, because this is a very interesting conversation. Because this happens to me sometimes. When you seem to be a type A, you seem to have your shit together, you're driving forward. Sometimes when you're always the one out front, it can seem very exhausting. And so I would imagine being around and lonely. I would imagine being around these other high achieving women, you finally feel like you can take a breath.
Oh my God, you get me. Yes. Oh my God. All of my neighbors and my friends are like, why are you doing all of these things? Just take a nap. You know what I told him when I joined M1, why I want to join M1? And he said, yes, you're perfect. But right after I said this, I said, my dreams are bigger than the people around me. Ooh.
He goes, you're in. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing is and you don't want to alienate the people you love, and that's, and that statement, I get it. Mm-hmm. But said in the wrong company.
Said in the wrong company makes you an asshole. True story. True story. Just because it happened yesterday, I'll tell you. And I don't let this stuff bother me, but it's interesting. It's an interesting human psychology experiment. I have got sober, lost a ton of weight, 65 pounds, 2 years sober. And all the people that I used to work with in the restaurant business are talking shit about me. Oh, he has a podcast. He thinks he's a guru. Fuck that motherfucker. These are people that I worked with for 7 years. Right? It's okay. I don't attach myself to it. They're sad that their life is where it is, but it cracks me up, right? Because no matter where you go, there's always going to be distractors. If you're successful or unsuccessful, it's all relative.
Well, that says way more about them than 100%. It does about you.
That's why I'm okay with it. Yeah. But it's interesting to me because it's a human psychology experience to understand that people, and so my mentor, one of my mentors, my spirit, you call him my spiritual mentor, Mr. Brad Johnson, who is the most amazing human I've ever met. He said, Austin, when you can walk around this universe and you can look at every soul and know that everybody's hurting from something, then you can have compassion in your heart. And I do. And that's why I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm. You
It's
never
the
know
truth.
what somebody's dealing with, for sure.
You never know what they've been through, and you never know what they're dealing with. And so when you can open up and give them space to not judge. And so the number one quality that people tell me about me is that there's no judgment from you. And I'm like, no, because I've probably done it worse. My early 20s was way worse. And so all I want you to do is just be the best version of yourself. And so there's no expectations. There's no anything, right? And so I'm curious because as you're speaking to me and we're having this conversation, it feels so good and clear and natural. But I don't think this was always the case with you.
No.
That's what I was going to ask.
I feel like anybody who's gone through some shit, like that's like those are the interesting people. Those and that what you said about judgment. I mean, that's how you know friendships. That's how you know, like, that's what real love is, really. The most loving thing you can do is when somebody screwed up, like to sit with them in their hurt without judgment, And I actually, I have this women's group, Aspiring Women Achieving More. It's really just motivation for women. We have a quote today that I post them a month in advance. So it's always a little surprise for me when anyway, the one that appeared today was if people are doubting how far you can go so far that you can't hear them anymore. So that is 100% what you were talking about.
I love it. It's the truth, because what I tell my team all the time, and it's kind of a reference point. I use a lot of things to just reference point things to get them to like wrap their head around it. I say, if you can wake up every day and know that Gary Vee says he's playing small, then we got shit to do. And what I'm saying to them is not like try harder. I'm saying to them, like, you're better than this. You're with me. We're on this journey, and there's no ceiling. There's no ceiling.
And you are your only competition.
It's it. It's it. And as my favorite quote, Matty A says, is he says, make your ceiling your new floor. And so we portray that there's these ceilings, there's these limitations on us, and really there isn't. But here's the kicker, is you have to know what success or what a good life looks like to you before you even go chase.
Yes.
That's the kicker.
And that's right back to, if you can't see it, you can't be it. It's that athlete. There's tons of like social science data on, studying athletes and the visualization of things. And I mean, it's like The Secret stuff, like Mandy 5 years ago wouldn't have bought into the woo stuff of visualization.
I try to keep it. No, I go there sometimes, but we try to,
right. But I mean, there's such power to it. Like our shared friend, Barry Griffiths and I do a mindset series on his podcast. And we just talked about vision boards because I have with my nanny, we made vision boards because it's the thing she wanted to do. And I wanted to support her. So we did it. And I put it in my closet and I didn't look at it for 6 months. And frickin' Austin, if like half of the things on that vision board that I made didn't come true in 6 months without looking at it. It's really just, it's your reticular activating system. What are you looking for? You just bought a new car. Oh, weird. You're seeing that car everywhere now, Well,
and what's interesting is here's the kicker. I don't think enough people get really granular with it. Like when you tell me you want a car, is it orange? Is the leather black? Like, let's make it like, no, I don't want to, like Ed Milet said. No, I didn't say I want to live in a certain area. I want to live right there. And then sure enough, he lived there. And so we have to ask ourselves, but more importantly, and here's the interesting thing. You have to have clarity on who you are as a person. Make sure that you're living your true vision, because I believe that most people's goals and things that they want are triggered by a false narrative. And so they're building life and goals on false BS.
Preach. Yes. I mean, if you, and I think that was a big part of, things that I figured out for myself, right? Like I was supposed to have been a doctor and I chose not to go to medical school. I followed this script of the things I was supposed to be. And it wasn't until you start peeling off those things that, well, is this my choice or is this an expectation that's been put on me? And it's just, I mean, it feels also very weird to think that all of this cool stuff that I've been able to pull off in my, life to date, like a lot of it was because of expectations, and so I'm not mad at it. Like I can't be mad at it, but it was incredibly freeing the moment I realized that, oh shit, I get to pick. Like, do you realize that? Like, I get to pick how I spend my days, how I spend, who I am around, the work that I do. Until you get really true on separating your choice from your expectation, you're never really going to understand who you are. And that is step number one in anything that you're doing.
Well, do you know who Kyle Cease is or not? So, do you know who that is?
Oh, sorry, broke up. Say it again.
Kyle Cease. Do you know who Kyle Cease is?
No.
So he's one of my favorite personal development guys. The best interview I've ever seen, Tom Ballou and him on Impact Theory. He never plans anything. Right. He's my guy. Everything's off the cuff. And he says that he believes that nobody's ever broke your heart. He said what they've done is they've broken your expectations. And by breaking your expectations, they got closer to your heart.
I mean, expectations
is everything. I just had mine. It's
everything.
I just had my expectations get driven into a tree doing about 200 miles an hour last week on a deal we were working on. And we did a podcast about it because on my other podcast, and I did it raw and I did everything because I wanted to show people that I'm trying to adopt this stoic mindset, like neutral thinking, because I get like, one of my faults is I'm wearing my heart on my sleeve, which is not my fault, but it's one of the things that hurts me too. I like that I live that way, but it also is what's got me in a lot of trouble too. And so, just trying to protect. So it's a double-edged sword because it also allows me to connect with people. So it's an interesting thing because there's been so many real estate deals for me that I've already, because I'm a visionary, right? So like I'm already thinking about we're going to do this and that. And you know how real estate goes. Sometimes it doesn't go that way. So you might just want to close the deal. You might just want to close the deal. And so as you build out how many properties do you have now under your portfolio units?
My portfolio that's mine is 22. I have 2 partners on a 53 unit. And then, I'm part of a syndication of 130. So all in 205.
So it's not that there's not women in multifamily. It's not that there's not women in investing. There are. I've met them. They're amazing. But why do you think a lot of there's not more? Is that something that y'all address in your group and stuff like that?
Well, I absolutely. And I mean, I've done a couple of talks on it. Actually, there's I think end of the day, if I had to only name like 1 or 2 things, all of the guidance out there is go buy that 400 unit property. You know what I mean? And it takes a certain level of bravado to jump in that way, and I would say, not knocking you boys out there, but like largely, men have a better developed sense of bravado than women do because we, if you look at high performing women, especially, we tend to have been incredible rule followers and we were perfect and we raised our hand and we got straight A's and we did everything that was expected of us. And I mean, even to dip your toes into real estate investing, it's kind of like a counterculture. It's a different way of looking at the world that you're going to figure out this money stuff and then go live your life rather than have this super high paying W-2 or be a stay-at-home mom or all of these things that you maybe should have been in your script. So number one, it being in, especially commercial real estate or real estate investing in general, it's outside of that normal path. Right. And then secondly, women do tend to want to prove things to themselves. I think imposter syndrome affects women in a higher proportion than men. And to take a jump into a $4 million property feels, it's scary,
Yeah, it's interesting. We have a group that we run through One Life Fully Lived. It was our second call last night, like recovery mastermind group. And I asked everybody that's in there that they don't know much about real estate. And I said, true or false, I was like, you need to have money to invest in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And all of them were like, true. And I'm like, no, you need to have somebody's money. Doesn't need to be your money.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I personally believe that I'd always like to have women in my business because they keep the company sane. Because us men in our egos can get us in a lot of trouble, you know. And I think as you look at investing on a whole, it can be methodically done
mm-hmm.
over time to gain levels. But like you said, the thing that we keep talking about is everybody says, no, you can't do it this way.
Right.
You've got to go out there. And I'm like, you don't got to do anything.
Yeah.
As you said, life's a choice.
Yes. Well, and I mean, what has really, you know, I kept the 4s and 6s and 8s felt very comfortable to me for like the first, call it 3-4 years of this journey. And actually just in September, my 2 partners and I closed on the 53 unit, which was the biggest that I've kind of been at the helm for. And I mean, what I think took me over the edge there was I couldn't get comfortable with like this idea of just going after this one end. Must be 100 units, must be heavy value add, must be business plan of 3 or 5 years. Like, I didn't think that worked in the climate that we're in right now. And the realization that like, oh my gosh, we can target something that's a stabilized asset. So number one, nobody's really looking at stabilized assets rather than value add. Yeah. Number two, we looked at, you know, smaller than 100 units, 53, right? But we still get the market that we love and the, you know, the really great debts that, you know, we locked in for 15 years and have 8 years of interest only. So what gives me a ton of comfort, and it's actually kind of a stoic philosophy type of thinking, is, you know, how can I get comfortable with the downside? And how can I think of, you know, whatever a potential thing that could go wrong and think that through in a more planned out way that I know how to address it when I get there. So worst case scenario was, you know, we could have economic vacancy of 42% on this 53 unit. Like we ran those numbers and still be able to pay our bills. Well, in the middle of COVID, you know, people that were losing their jobs were like bartenders and, manicurists, people who had jobs that largely didn't require a college education. The people who were computer programmers or high-end sales reps or nurses, they had their jobs largely still. So, you know, we just did kind of, I got all the applications from, for, you know, being able to live in that property from the previous property manager, and just saw that, oh my gosh, only 20 of them have these at-risk type jobs. So, you know, I got comfortable with the downside and we jumped in. So,
wow, I never would have, you just blew me away with that. I would have never thought to go through the applications and look at what their jobs were.
But I mean, end of the day, like so I ended up studying economics for my master's, and like, that's like, you can really get granular. I mean, I feel like that's the thing that I say all the time in my coaching groups and stuff, that if you get very specific, very down into the dirty of what it is that you know, are going for, and any problem, I think this is a big one. Any problem that you've got, if you can really quantify it in a very precise way, it is so much less scary. There was a woman that joins our accountability group on Fridays that she's like, I want to quit my job, but I need the healthcare. I'm like, well, have you ever priced it out? Like, do you know how much it would cost you to get healthcare with like not with your employer? And the next week she shows up, she's like, maybe it was $500. I'm like, so your fear that was keeping you from the life you want to live was $500.
Dude, my favorite thing is, when they tell me like, I really want to invest in real estate and I can't afford a house. And I'm like, well, have you talked to a mortgage broker? No, we've been waiting for like a year. I'm like, well, you have no idea.
You don't know until you know. You have to ask these questions, you know. And I one other question in this whole real estate investing game is everybody says, oh, I want to quit my W-2. Well, I want financial freedom. Well, what the hell does that mean? You know, there's no real quantifying of that problem, because people go chase these 400 units or 100 units and then 20% and 10% and end up owning a duplex and don't really achieve what it is that they're going for. So I made a little calculator, just a spreadsheet, to help people really estimate what is it that you need, you know, and if you exactly, you know, where do you want to go? If you want to drive from, you know, Chicago to LA, then great. You just punch it in the GPS, you know the next right step,
Yeah.
right? But if you want to go to New York, it's a different next right step. You just got to figure out your, North Star of where you want to go, and then you figure out the next right step.
No, I love that. And so what would your advice be to anybody that's listening that is a single mom, does have a W-2, wants to invest? How do you juggle it all? How do you get it all done?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit offline, but this concept of being ruthlessly protective of my time. And what helps, and I'm not perfect at it. I am big time a work in progress on this. What I will say is I switched day jobs so that I could have more control of my time, so that I could really do time blocking and execute it in a big way. I mean, the first thing is, so I'm a woman I am coaching who's a single mom. We with the less bandwidth really do have to get very careful and intentional about how we're spending that time. So really being very clear, as absolutely clear as you can be, on what that next right step is, and being prepared to work on that next right step the minute you have some free time. So for instance, I drive a lot for my work. So I'll yell at my phone like, "Hey Siri, put Austin Linney on my follow-up list." She's going to talk to me now. But so when I have this time that I can dedicate to, my side hustle, I know exactly where to go. I'm not spending a half hour trying to figure out what I should be doing. I am prepared, Well,
what's interesting is I have a friend who runs a ton of money for UT. He's a trader for like 5 billion. For them, they have 50 billion, so that's nothing. But he's very into like Ironmans and everything. And so we met before the start of the year, and I was like, I'm a little bit. Last year was nuts for me. I'm a little bit of a doer. Like I just dive in, and then this whole year for me is about metrics. And so we went in and I scheduled out my Audible books that I'm listening to for the entire year. So I don't have to waste 30 minutes or a day trying to find the next book. I know exactly where I'm going. Same thing with the training. And man, I tell you what, because I think in society, what we're dealing with right now is two things. This is kind of stuff that people don't talk about. I think we have decision overload. And I think we don't plan enough, that people don't understand that you have more beta waves in your brain in the morning. And so as the day goes on, your skills for picking and being disciplined go out the window. So for me, I try to be done with big coaching stuff by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Like I don't want to make hard decisions after 4 o'clock because my strength is not as strong.
Well, I read a book called Scarcity that, economics, sort of scarcity, you think scarcity of money, scarcity of time. But the thing I didn't think about that they really dived into the social science of is scarcity of bandwidth. And what you're saying is proven and true, because like they did a study that like people were doing cognitive problems and they were all dieters, right? Well, the dieters who were doing these cognitive problems with the bowl of candy next to the computer did way less well than the people who did it with that candy across the room, because all of their bandwidth was going to not eating that damn candy. So setting yourself up for success is huge.
Well, here's the deal. We as people, and I used to know this when I was drinking a lot, we like to put obstacles in our way because we get off on the discomfort of like putting booby traps in our way. And
but there's a reward there. Right?
Yeah.
Like booze does a lot of things, right? Like it's number one, it's a reason that I couldn't do X, Y, Z. So I'm not really letting myself down. It's that.
There you go. It's almost that.
The stress release, right? Like there's that deep breath.
It's more of what the drink tells you than what the actual drink is doing.
Yeah.
And see, what people don't talk about, these are weird things that people don't talk about when you talk about not drinking anymore. I had to retrain myself how to celebrate.
Ooh, yeah.
Like, talk about something that you never would have thought about in your entire life. So then you close on a deal and you're like, well, that's normally I would go have drinks.
Yeah. What do you do?
And dude, screw that. That even worse than that was going on vacation and not drinking.
I know. Yeah.
That was insane. When I went to Costa Rica for 10 days and didn't drink, that was like, it turned the whole corner for me. When I got through that trip, I was like, okay, I'm good.
I can do this. What do you do instead to celebrate?
I shouldn't get this out. So I've created this thing where anytime I close something or something happens, I listen to 24K Magic by Bruno Mars.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
My 5-year-old loves it too.
There you go. Me and my 5-year-old, you're a 5-year-old, we could get down. But that's what's interesting. It's the truth. Think about it. The moment that you go out of the country or you go to Mexico and you step foot, what does your first mind say? I have a cocktail. We're going to do this. And so now you go hang out with friends. I'm going to have a cocktail. And it's amazing how many things are associated with having a drink.
Well, I did Sober January. Like we did a Sober January challenge through Aspiring Women. And I mean, I'm a single mama. I went on some first dates and I'm like, I'm not drinking. Right. And boys canceled on me, Austin. Like, well,
no way.
Yeah, I know. Seriously. I'm like,
excuse me. Do you know who I am? Excuse me. I buy apartments. Do you know who I am?
But I mean, well, no, because we couldn't have a drink, whatever. But anyway, but I feel like, wow, what a cool hack. To see who's like reliant.
You know what's interesting with people, and I shouldn't let this out, but I like to study people, and because I'm guilty of it. A lot of the times, I'll set traps out for people to see how they react, because by setting that trap and them reacting a certain way, I see what their real intentions are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, just taking notes. This observer of humanity. Mm-hmm. I mean, being able to pick up on empathetically what's going on in anybody's reaction of anything. This emotional intelligence thing is really, the 80s and the 90s brought us this just work more, and that's how you're going to find success. Where we're at now with technology, and it's really, being able to do this deep work and really being able to do this connection and really show up in a way that is truthful and authentic. Like you're saying, is really the primary currency, I feel, of what success drivers are in this century.
Wait, now I think ultimately, there was a very interesting podcast with Seth Godin and Aubrey Marcus, and they were talking about how the contract work sector is gaining like so much and end over end. And what they're saying is, like, we were talking about this last night on our group call. If you have a skill, you no longer have to be in said city to make money from your skill, and then you get back half your time. And so I think we need to disband the BS of it's not possible. Everything is possible. It's just how bad do you want it?
Exactly.
And once you get clear on what you want, it's funny. I do this trick with all my young kids that I coach, because they'll have a regular job and they're like, hey, I want to quit this job so I can focus on real estate. And I'm like, okay, how much you make a year? Neat. And they're like, well, after taxes, I make $27,000. I was like, okay, so let me do the math for you. If you went out on January 1st, and by January 15th, you had 2 wholesale deals that did $27K, you could leave your job for the year. And they go, fuck.
Right.
Because you haven't put it down on paper. You don't realize how
it's the making that problem granular. We got to put this calculator in the show notes, because once you can figure that stuff out, it's getting your hands around, what do I spend? What do I make? Figuring that out. And if you're older than 22, making $27,000 after taxes, a little bit more difficult to figure out, So, I mean, man, it's.
But what's interesting is I think financial freedom, the definition of it needs to change. This is the way I view it. Put yourself in a position to have passive income coming in to get you neutral. Yeah. So when you're neutral and you're free, you can make the actual decision for the rest of your life.
Exactly. Figure out the money and then go live your life.
Yes, because it's not like any of us want financial freedom to go sit on the beach. I would be done after a day. I don't like that. I like to work, but I want to be able to make my choices. Aubrey Marcus was saying, he said, you could make a choice not to eat and you would die, but that's still your choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, when you think of it that way, everything is a choice. And so, I want to wrap this up. How do people find out about your group? How do they find out about you?
Yeah. So the catch-all for all the stuff I'm involved in, my investing arm, Good Fortune Capital, we do syndications. I do coaching. Aspiring Women Achieving More is a women empowerment group. Best place to find all of that information is on mandymcallister.com.
I will tell you this. I knew this was going to be this way, but you're so well spoken. You're so put together. It's quite impressive. I'm really glad that Barry introduced us. And you're still in Chicago?
I am. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I don't get up that way that often, but we are talking about doing something in Minnesota, maybe. So
okay.
So nearish. But May 14th and 15th, we're doing a massive free mastermind in Nashville. Bunch of big syndicators. All the guys from Jake and Gino are coming up. Bruce Peterson, Tyler Coble, Elvin Holiday, all the big guys are speaking.
Count me
some
in.
Dudes from bigger pockets. So it's going to be a good weekend. So
literally, when we get off here, I'm going to request kid coverage so
there
that
you
I get
go.
to
Kid coverage.
Yes.
Come have fun. We're going to do it great. Guys, if you like this episode, make sure you send it out to your friends, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Construct Your Life with Austin Linney. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to start constructing your life by taking immediate action on what you learned. For show notes, resources, and more information on one-on-one coaching with Austin, visit constructyourlifepodcast.com.